Hey everyone, this is the detailed version of the autofocus test I conducted for the S5 as part of my full review. If you haven't watched it already, I invite you to check it out. I'll leave a link in the description. Before we start, let's first understand how autofocus works to compare it with what Panasonic did for their updated autofocus system. Any reliable focus system used these days need to do two things to properly lock focus. First is detection. The detection algorithm is the AI that identifies the subject of focus, such as eyes, faces, and so on. Then it relays this information to the focus driver, which moves the lens internal focus elements to lock on the subject. In a reliable focus system, this operation can happen hundreds of times per second. Now let's go back to the S5. I'll only share a couple of tests not to waste your time with all I went through, but rather focus on sharing the results you need to know. The major improvement is in the AI of the detection algorithm, so the camera can now detect not only eyes and faces, but also heads, full human bodies as well as animals. It can do that pretty efficiently. All this is happening 480 times per second, which delivers as super quick and reliable results in only 0.08 seconds as it's officially claimed by Panasonic, a performance that can finally compete against Canon and Sony. But here comes the three killer drawbacks. First, this impressive performance only happens in photo mode, which is another clue proving this camera to be designed more as a photo camera. I couldn't show you any example of how snappy and accurate it is, since the camera has a quirk that once you connect a monitor while in photo mode, Panasonic told me that for some reason the autofocus reliability would be compromised. I'll let you know what's gonna happen in video mode after sharing the second drawback, which is the fact that continuous autofocus is only possible on native L-mount lenses. If you use adapters on your existing glass, then you're stuck with single autofocus. I personally use Sigma MC21 adapter to mount EF Sigma lenses on my S1H, and that's what I did on the S5 as well. The same lenses that I adapt to my Sony a7 III, except that on E-mount they deliver almost identical performances as native Sony's. Pretty surprising that it's more compatible with Sony than with Panasonic, considering that Sigma and Panasonic have what they call the L-mount alliance, which literally promised, quote, a new era of lens compatibility without compromise, and that virtually all functional and qualitative characteristics of each respective system will be fully retained, end quote, across Panasonic and Sigma lenses. But obviously this promise doesn't apply and is compromised when using Sigma adapters on Sigma lenses, which makes this claim pretty misleading, honestly. In all cases, the L-mount is still not the most popular mount out there, as it's relatively new, and Panasonic is not giving us enough reasons to adopt it yet, especially after most of us having invested so much in either EF or Sony E-mount glass over the years. We know they just announced a whole new lens lineup that seems to be more on the affordable side just by looking at their 1.8 aperture, and it's interesting how they're all matching in size, very reminiscent of a Cinelens lineup, which makes them way more practical when it comes to filter compatibility and matte box setups. Who knows, maybe this could be another reason to consider this mount. Okay, so let's now see what happens in video mode provided you're using a native lens. First, the detection and autofocus speeds become tied to the frame rates, which max out at 30 frames per second in full frame 4K, 60 times per second in APS-C mode 4K, and 120 times in full frame Full HD in S&Q. Beyond 120 frames, you can only use manual focus. Second, focus generally performs better in cropped APS-C mode than in full frame. Let's check it out in action. In this test, I was using the 20-60mm kit lens. In 60 frames, it's relatively fast. It couldn't detect the model's back of the head or body as she was moving away though, despite the fact that this is a locked-off shot, but for some reason, as the model moved to the side, the autofocus decided to throw the whole scene out of focus, then stop following her right before I cut. Let's jump to 30 frames in full frame, where reliability becomes very much in question. For some weird reason, the AI seems very capable of detecting the subject, but the focus driver lags behind and misses the face, then goes way off target. Then in other cases, it fails to catch up and react on time, then snaps to focus when the subject is static, then lose focus again as she moves. And once more, it hunts, snaps to focus. Then for some reason the camera decides to hunt for focus again and goes off topic. Remember, all these tests are with the camera locked off and in a very controlled setting. Once I switch to APS-C, even at 30 frames, you get relatively better results. But still unreliable as you can see. Not sure if I'm doing something wrong, but I can't remember to experience any of this with my Sony. So bottom line, video autofocus once more turned to be a disappointment. The problem with video autofocus is that if it messes up just a little bit, it would render the whole clip unusable. So with such inconsistent and unreliable results across all recording modes, even with native lenses, I personally wouldn't trust it in any of my shoots. Another reason why I wouldn't invest in L-mount glass and stick with manual focus on my existing adapted lenses for a bit, at least till they design a new and reliable autofocus system. So far, photo mode could be the only reason to consider native L-mount lenses if continuous autofocus is crucial to your type of photography. With that, I conclude this episode. Again, don't forget to check the full review in the link below. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.